These educational superpowers proved potent tools for political purposes, creating online persuasion sequences of videos where insights from each one would both update someone's views and motivate them to watch another video about a related topic, where they were likely to be further convinced. When the goal was to diffuse a conflict between two nations, for example, historical documentaries would be independently released in both countries that cast the origins and the conduct of conflict in a more nuanced light. Pedagogical news stories would explain who on their own side stood to benefit from continued conflict and their techniques for stoking it. At the same time, likable characters from the other nation would start appearing in popular shows on the entertainment channels, just as sympathetically portrayed minority characters had bolstered the civil and gay rights movements in the past. Before long, political commentators couldn't help but notice growing support for a political agenda centered around 7 slogans: democracy, tax cuts, government social service cuts, military spending cuts, free trade, open borders, socially responsible companies. What was less obvious was the underlying goal: to erode all previous power structures in the world. Items 2 to 6 eroded state power, and democratizing the world gave the Omega business empire more influence over the selection of political leaders. Socially responsible companies further weakened state power by taking over more and more of the services that governments had, or should have provided. The traditional business elite were weakened simply because it couldn't compete with Prometheus-backed companies on the free market, and therefore earned an ever-shrinking share of the world economy. Traditional opinion leaders from political parties to faith groups lacked the persuasion machinery to compete with the Omega's media empire. As with any sweeping change, there were winners and losers, although there was a palpable new sense of optimism in most countries as education, social services, and infrastructure improved. Conflicts subsided and local companies released breakthrough technologies that swept the world. Not everybody was happy. While many displaced workers got rehired for community projects, those who'd held great power and wealth generally saw both shrink. This began in the media and technology sectors, but it spread virtually everywhere. The reduction in world conflicts led to defense budget cuts that hurt military contractors. Burgeoning upstart companies typically weren't publicly traded with the justification that profit-maximizing shareholders would block their massive spending on community projects. Thus, the global stock market kept losing value, threatening both finance tycoons and regular citizens who'd counted on their pension funds. As if the shrinking profits of publicly traded companies weren't bad enough, investment firms around the world had noticed a disturbing trend. All their previously successful trading algorithms seemed to have stopped working, underperforming even simple index funds. Someone else out there always seemed to outsmart them and beat them at their own game. Although masses of powerful people resisted the wave of change, their response was strikingly ineffective, almost as if they had fallen into a well-planned trap. Huge changes were happening at such a bewildering pace that it was hard to keep track and develop a coordinated response. Moreover, it was highly unclear what they should push for. The traditional political right had seen most of their slogans co-opted, yet the tax cuts and improved business climate were mostly helping their high-tech competitors. Virtually every traditional industry was now clamoring for a bailout, but limited government funds pitted them in a hopeless battle against one another, while the media portrayed them as dinosaurs seeking state subsidies simply because they couldn't compete. The traditional political left opposed the free trade and the cuts in government social services, but delighted in the military cutbacks and the reduction of poverty. Indeed, much of their thunder was stolen by the undeniable fact that social services had improved now that they were provided by idealistic companies rather than the state. Poll after poll showed that most voters around the world felt their quality of life improving, and things were generally improving in a good direction. This had a simple mathematical explanation. Before Prometheus, the poorer 50% of the Earth's population had only about 4% of the global income, enabling the Omega-controlled companies to win their hearts and votes by sharing only a modest fraction of their profits with them. Consolidation. As a result, nation after nation saw landslide election victories for parties embracing the 7 Omega slogans. In carefully optimized campaigns, they portrayed themselves at the center of the political spectrum, denouncing the right as greedy bailout-seeking conflict mongers and lambasting the left as big government tax and spend innovation stiflers. What almost nobody realised was that Prometheus had carefully selected the optimal people to groom as candidates and pulled all its strings to secure their victory. Before Prometheus, there had been growing support for the universal basic income movement, which proposed tax-funded minimal income for everybody as a remedy for technological unemployment. This movement imploded when the corporate community projects took off, since the Omega-controlled business empire was in effect providing the same thing. With the excuse of improving coordination of the community projects, an international group of companies launched the Humanitarian Alliance, a non-governmental organization aiming to identify and fund the most valuable humanitarian efforts worldwide. Before long, virtually the entire Omega empire supported it. It had launched global projects on an unprecedented scale, even in countries that had largely missed out on the tech boom, improving education, health, prosperity, and governance. Needless to say, Prometheus provided carefully crafted project plans behind the scenes, ranked by positive impact per dollar. Rather than simply dole out cash, as under basic income proposals, the Alliance, as it colloquially became known, would engage those it supported to work towards a cause. As a result, a large fraction of the world's population ended up feeling grateful and loyal to the Alliance, often more than to their own government. As time passed, the Alliance increasingly assumed the role of a world government, as national governments saw their power continually erode. National budgets kept shrinking due to tax cuts, while the Alliance budget grew to dwarf those of all governments combined. All the traditional roles of national governments became increasingly redundant and irrelevant. The Alliance provided by far the best social services, education, and infrastructure. Media had diffused international conflict to the point that military spending was largely unnecessary, and growing prosperity had eliminated most roots of old conflicts, which traced back to the competition over scarce resources. A few dictators and others had violently resisted this new world order and refused to be bought, but they were all toppled in carefully orchestrated coups or mass uprisings. The Omegas had now completed the most dramatic transition in the history of life on Earth. For the first time ever, our planet was run by a single power, amplified by an intelligence so vast that it could potentially enable life to flourish for billions of years on Earth and throughout our cosmos. But what specifically was their plan?